I'm Eric Loy, and welcome to Eric Loy Interviews. On this podcast, we talk with folks from the VTuber community on their channels, their talents, their stories, where they come from, and their plans for the future. We're joined by Shuji Wakahisa. Hi.
Hey y'all, hey y'all.
Hey,
How goes everyone?
and glad you're here. I appreciate it. Please introduce yourself to everybody.
So I'll just give my normal stream intro.
There you go.
Hey there, I'm Shuji Wakahisa. I'm your local elf in the woods, cursed to be at 1 HP. I draw art, I play games, and I do all sorts of different things. And I also work on a comic as well.
Yeah, and we're gonna talk about that whether you want to or not.
The comic is new a
Mhm.
little bit. It's a little bit new. It's called Modern Zombie, and it revolves around my character Zachary, who may look like an ordinary college student and goes to school with his friends, but he's also studying to become a coroner slash mortician actually. The thing is that he's not actually human. He's actually not. So he has to live among humans while pretending to be a human. I totally messed up on the intro there, but I tried my best.
I know, that's perfectly fine. So
Yeah.
so have you? Is this kind of a culmination of something you've always wanted to do? A comic of some sort?
I've always been wanting to draw comics ever since I was such a small little kid, honestly. Like when I was a kid, I had trouble reading all the time. Like I couldn't read actual words most of the time. So the pictures were the things that spoke to me. Like how you say, a picture's worth 1,000 words. So whenever I saw comic books, yeah, there were speech bubbles and stuff like that, but I just followed the pictures, and for me, it was the best way to learn how to read, actually. So I've always wanted to draw comics and always wanted to tell stories. I'm always interested by that because it's like taking you into a different world if I'm gonna be honest.
Oh, absolutely. You've created your own world. Yeah.
Oh, like there is some inspirations from other stories that I've gotten, and I've had some friends help me out with it, and it's just been a really, really good. It's been really, really great because I normally did a lot of fan art, which fan art is good, of course, but I always wanted to have my own original story per se, like
Right.
well, at least my own story per se.
Yeah. So what type of style do you have for this webtoon?
For me, I have like an anime cartoonish style. It's hard to place it where it's either anime or cartoon because a lot of people say that my style is a mix of both. You can't really say, oh, that's anime style or that's cartoon. But I do it all in color. I use Clip Studio Paint, which is the program that I use for pretty much everything, for my streams, for my designs and such. And I just work in that program because I find it's the most comfortable for me.
Yeah. Yeah. And is it kind of a if I were to look at the Sunday papers, if people still have Sunday papers,
I think so.
If I was looking at the comics section, is it something that would fit in there, or is it something that's really geared toward being on the web and having that type of distribution?
It's more geared. When I was first working on it, I was gonna do it strictly in the webtoon format, like going up and down. But I've been wanting to get back into the comic book format, like manga slash comic books. So I've been working in that one. It's been a bit hard to rewire my brain to work in that format because I've been doing up and down comics for a couple of years. But it would mostly fit in the manga slash comic book format per se.
Well, I gotta ask you because I think this is fascinating. Telling stories in this format, you're basically creating storyboards from what you want to do with the character. Instead of creating entire scripts, you're having to both give the character the exact words you want and draw and create the exact place where they need to be, enough to cover what would be several seconds of animated film.
Yeah, actually, before I did streaming, actually, I actually mentioned this in my recent storytime video on my YouTube that I actually just put up recently. I basically said before, like before I did streaming, I actually did go to college to study illustration and graphic design, which are two opposite ends of the spectrum, but yet they somehow worked for me because I do both.
Yeah.
So like logo design, script writing, and then illustration
Hmm.
and stuff, storybook. But for me, I've always been fascinated by storyboards. Like back when people used to do them by hand. I
Right.
love hand drawn animation. It's one of my favorite things actually,
Yeah.
and I have a big respect for it.
Mm.
But yeah, with storyboards, what I normally do for my comic book process is I do this. I write the script, but I don't write it in a way where it's like character says this
Yeah.
all the time.
Right.
I lay out the setting. I have bullet points saying, okay, I want this to happen in the chapter. Here's what's gotta happen. Keep this stuff in mind. X character knows this. Y character knows that. These two characters don't know this. Make sure that it's not gonna be, too meshed up.
Mm.
That way I can set the ground lines for it.
Yeah.
After that, after I have a whole entire chapter drawn up, and I recommend this to anyone that's doing comics actually.
Mm.
Um, After I have the whole entire chapter scripted out, actually, my bad. I then start thumbnailing. I thumbnail the whole entire page so I can look and see how each page is gonna look.
Uh-huh.
If it's a double spread, I have to keep in count. Okay, do I have to add more panels so I can make this double spread happen, or is this double spread even necessary?
Mm.
And then I I make like small little text boxes to see where the characters are speaking, make sure the flow is all right.
Mhm.
And after that, I then just go to putting in the file. I draw it in the big page after I zoom it, and thumbnail should be small actually.
Mhm.
And then I draw it and I line art it, I color it, and then I do all the backgrounds and effects, and that's it.
And that's all in 5 minutes.
Not exactly, but I guess.
And no, that takes a while. And I don't care how many times you've done it. That's to do it. And I imagine you've got the artist curse of absolutely wanting it to be right.
Oh yes.
Yeah. So it's got to be tweakable.
hmm I actually sometimes what I do to speed up the process a bit, and this is something you can do in Clip Studio,
Mm.
is that I save templates
Mm.
of my folder setup. So I have like I actually have it up pulled up right now actually,
Mm.
because I do multitasking a bit. Um, but for me, I have a folder that says, okay, this is the entirety of one page. Here's the liner folder.
Yeah.
Here is the coloring folder for the characters, and then I have a liner folder for the backgrounds, and a color folder for the backgrounds, and then an effects folder for any necessary effects like speed lines, fading, and so on. Anything like that that falls in on that. And of
That's
course, I do the text last, that way I don't have to worry about folders and stuff getting all jumbled up.
that's a fascinating look into how you're doing these things. I imagine people have their own way of doing it, but
Oh
uh,
yes.
but this is the type that obviously works for you after hammering it out. And is this the way you wanted to do it when you started the comic?
Um, when I first started doing comics, I actually did it on DeviantArt and I used a different program,
Uh-huh.
Painful Sai. But I've been jumping around from different programs to help me figure out what I would do. And lately, it's just been sketch it all out, do the line art. I tend to do line art in batches, so that way I can do everything all at once. So if I'm in a line art mood, okay, I do everything in line art first. And
Mm.
then if I'm in a coloring mood the next day, okay, I can do coloring. That way the flow doesn't get interrupted. There are some times though I do it all at once, like one whole page in one day
Mm.
and such, or even more.
Yeah.
Depends on the page. It depends on the complexity of it, of course.
Yeah. Yeah. So when you put one out, put a series out. How many panels is it usually? Um, I mean, it's straight. Yeah, and now it's going to be in a different format, not just straight up and down. But how many panels
Yeah.
is it usually when you do release something?
I try to at least give two panels at the very least, but sometimes, depending on the page, it really depends on the page because one page I have right here that I'm looking at, it's actually the first one, has one, two, three, four. And then the next page after that has one, two, three, four, and then the next one after that has two. But the dialogue also can contribute to the amount of panels per page if you're doing it in a comic book format, of
Mm.
course.
Yeah.
Because you have to give just enough information to keep the person, like reading
Mm.
and such.
Yeah.
And then give just enough information, like not give too much information that it'll be like overloaded. A lot of comic books I see sometimes tend to do that,
Right.
and that's not bad. Again, it depends on the story.
Yeah.
But for my story, I like to kind of give that you're watching an I like to think of it like animated in my head as I'm drawing it, and that kind of helps contribute to what panels are what, basically.
Yeah. It sometimes you see in a comic that and you see with the big like superhero type comics where
Hmm.
something will show up and they're asking you to reference something that happened in issue 9 back in 1973 when
Hmm.
there's so much extra dialogue just to explain why this one person shows up that I don't know, it kind of takes away from the shock of having them there in the first place.
Yeah, that's something that actually is a little nitpick with me. For me, if you're gonna, so I'll use a different thing right here, for example. Like if you're gonna explain something,
Hmm.
it's gotta be real quick. Like I'll pull up, like for my webtoon comic or for my webcomic in general, I have the description pretty short and sweet.
Hmm.
Let me grab it really quick. I got it right here actually. But for the synopsis, like me and my friend, another friend of mine, he and I talk so much about comics and all about stories. He actually is one of my helpers, in a sense, to help me figure out my character design. Because while I can come up with comics and stuff, I have a bit of a trouble coming up with character design a little bit.
Okay.
But he helped me out with it.
Yeah.
But the synopsis of my comic, it's this. Zachary Graves may look like your everyday college student, studying to become a mortician like the rest of his family for Sparrow City. A pretty normal life, so long as no one discovers he and his family are all undead, that is.
Mm. Yeah.
And that just brings it up real quick.
Oh yeah, yeah. It's concise, gets to the point.
Hmm.
It transmits what you want to transmit to the audience, and then their imagination
Hmm.
can go from there.
Oh yeah, like I haven't said like, oh, where did these undead come from?
Hmm.
Is it like, was there something that happened in the past? Like it brings up the question. I like to leave it up to questions, and sometimes I'll even have parts of my story where I want to see where people come up with things. Like,
Mm.
okay, how does the system work in here?
Yeah, yeah.
And that's very important actually.
That's very diabolical of you, actually.
My evil plan is working.
I say I say I tip my hat for the diabolicality of that. The but how far ahead are you writing? I mean,
So
this is a linear type of story, right? I mean, it goes from one to one. It's not just one shot and then something episodic type thing.
no, it's not episodic. I am very much a person that likes to keep things like, okay, if this happened, as we said before earlier, like, if this happened in issue so and so number, it's gonna contribute to later.
Hmm.
But I'm gonna make sure that it contributes at a point. Oh,
Hello.
my
Oh,
bad, my
oh,
pupper.
as you heard in
Hmm.
the background a little bit, there's a wonderful doggo that helps you out. That
Yep, it does.
and what's her name?
Her name is Delilah. The chat calls her the doggo of wisdom because when she starts barking on stream, it's like the chat the chat's like they do this little emote that I have, which is like a little. It's called a looky emote,
Hmm.
where Willow is just looking at you with their big ol' eyes, and they're like, "We're listening, doggo. We're listening very intently."
the,
But
the, 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 the gathering has commenced to hear the
yeah,
word. Yes. Uh,
they just gather. Honestly, they just do. And I love my owls. Honestly, I love them
absolutely.
so much.
Well, we
Hmm.
were kind of talking about the wanting to the timeline of your stories and how far ahead are you doing them?
So I am currently on chapter one, as right now, like as we're talking about this.
Hmm.
Currently chapter one, page, let me check. Page 7 will be coming out soon.
Hmm.
I just need to actually get the text done soon because like it's gonna be out soon. Um, but I usually work in batches. I work with the person who like this is someone else, of course, but a little bit really quick. I work in batches, so that way I can keep ahead of things.
Hmm.
I would highly recommend for those that do comics, please have at least the start, the middle, and the end figured out, or at least have it bullet pointed to what you want.
Mm.
I have about 10 chapters or so in terms of writing
Right.
ahead, but I'm currently 3 chapters ahead in drawing right now.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean,
They're,
you're leaving yourself some wiggle room, aren't you?
Yes, I am. Like because there are of course times where we talked about like with plot holes and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
If I see something that needs to be fixed, I have enough time to go, okay, something in chapter 7 doesn't match up with something that I put in chapter like 5 or something like that. Okay, I have to go back and fix that really, really quick.
Mm-hmm.
I'm writing it out so that way I can know what I have to do.
Mm-hmm.
And that way it gives me enough time to fix things if I need to.
Absolutely. And you never know when. I'm going to ask this straight up to you. If you're writing something, you've got something going down, and you've got an idea of what you want to do, and another idea comes into your head while you're doing it.
Like for the story, just curious?
Yeah, for the story to go, and then you've got another branch, and then suddenly you got, oh, I could do this and this and this with it. Does that stop you? Do you ignore it and keep going with what you did in the first place, or can it derail you?
So again, like how I mentioned, I bullet point a lot of my things
Mm-hmm.
out. So I have things that connect to each other. So, oh, if characters are going to the store, then maybe this might happen. You might, or like characters are going, into this territory. I try to make sure that everything makes sense, and in a way, it will back up the next thing, the thing that happened previously.
Mm-hmm.
If I see that this new thing could help with the plot, I will put it to the side a bit, not put it into the bullet point list just yet,
Mm-hmm.
but I'll tinker with it a bit,
Mm-hmm.
and I'll see does this improve it,
Mm-hmm.
does it or not, and if it improves it, then I'll put it in.
Mm-hmm.
If it doesn't, I'll put it to the side, and maybe I'll leave it for something else. I do have ideas that are right now still floating in my head for like season 2 or season 3,
Yeah.
because that's how I write, of course, to keep with the men, so I don't overwork myself, and
Right.
that way I don't have to focus on something that's so far ahead when it hasn't even been brought up or even going to be thought up yet, at least for
Yes.
the characters. Um, but that way I go like, okay, this may not work in season 1, but it might work in season 2.
Right.
So
Yeah.
that
So
way I can still work with it.
it goes in. It goes into the file, and then maybe you
Hmm.
can pull it out later. That's a real good way to do things. It's fascinating to
Hmm.
me to talk to somebody who's obviously as creative as you are and talented as you are do this and have not just write it out and put it out, but have such a game plan and a battle plan for doing this. Uh,
Hmm.
it's very and I like to be as efficient as possible when I do
Hmm.
these things, and it's very efficient. And seems to me like you've got to set up where it's not necessarily going to burn you out.
Yeah, that's actually one thing that my community tends to. I will admit that I do tend to a bit overwork myself a little bit,
Mm,
but also I try to do things in a way where it's like a video game
mm,
almost. Like, okay, I have to get X amount of, things to move on to this level. I need X amount of tools before I can even do this in this dungeon or like whatever I have to do. That way I can plan things out. I actually in my schedule notebook that I have,
mm,
I kind of block list it so that way not well block list. I don't know how to put it like this, but I tend to like block things out in time segments
right.
where I say, okay, for 2 hours I'll work on this, for 1 hour I'll work on this, for X amount of time I'll goof around and just do something to relax myself and recharge.
Yeah.
That way it keeps myself from not going like very,
Yeah.
very, very tired.
Yeah. Just do something that you decide I really want to get this done and then regret it later.
Yeah, because there have been times, and this happened during to me in college, because funnily enough, well, not funnily enough, but like I don't know how to phrase it better.
Hmm.
There was a few times in my stream knows this for those that have been with my stream for a long time. I did college and streaming at the same time,
Hmm.
But because since I had to wake up early, like at 4 a.m. or something to get ready for college, I would be streaming at 6 p.m. and then be very, very tired as I got back home.
Oh yeah.
So, like, the schedule was okay, wake up in the morning, go to college, drive through traffic, and then quickly do some homework from college, and then go straight to stream.
That's
Or
right.
sometimes it would just be like get home and then go straight to stream.
That's right.
And then
Yeah.
I'd be dead on the floor for the next day.
Yeah. Fix some pizza rolls. Go, or
Yeah.
ramen, or you're in college, so ramen, and go from there.
Well, I actually am no longer in college anymore.
I know,
Actually,
but
I'm
back then it
yeah.
would be ramen. It seems to be the thing
Mhm,
that keeps college age kids going these days is ramen. And sometimes
yeah.
some guys my age too, when the paycheck's low. Um, but
Mhm.
the with this is, I mean, how are you having enough time to do anything else on stream and still be an entertainer?
Could you repeat that really quick 1 second?
Yeah,
Sorry, is my bad.
no, it's fine. It's
Uh,
I didn't put it very well. With everything you're
No,
doing
no, no,
with
no. It just my headset came loose for a second.
oh
My bad.
yeah, I talked so loud I knocked it clean off your ears. I do that all the
Ah.
time. It's crazy. The with everything that you're doing with this, and obviously it's a labor of love for you. I mean, just hearing you
Mhm,
talk about it, you can hear that. And
mhm.
the amount of time you're putting in that, how do you find the time to go on and do anything else and do that on stream?
So for me, like how I mentioned, I block things out into specific time segments. Like I
Yeah.
even tell my friends, like I have like my friends in IRL, my friends online. Um, we try to plan things out around which we try to plan things out around the schedule a bit.
Hmm.
Um, usually I usually basically set specific days for myself to rest and days for myself to just, do stream. And I find that for me the schedule helped me a lot. Like Monday, Wednesday, and Thursdays and Saturdays are the days that I stream. So Tuesday is where I'll be working on something that can be done. I'll be working on something that can be done like for the week
Okay.
that can be put up during the week, like schedule it.
Hmm.
And then Friday I will also do that as well too. That way I have like a backlog of things to go up while I'm doing something offline per se.
Okay.
And on Sunday is my full blown rest day. That is the day that I choose for myself to rest. I relax. I draw my own things that I want to draw, personal art.
Yeah.
And having that set up for that helps me a lot because it just makes sure that I don't overwork myself. Because I'm very time blind. So scheduling things helps me to see things
Yeah.
in a sense, you know?
Yeah, that's a great way to do it. And having that schedule, I'm heartened by the fact that you're still drawing in your spare time because
Mm-hmm.
that means
I
it hasn't become a total job for you or anything like that, or you haven't
I mean,
lost wanting to do it.
it is still a job to me, but I do have things that are outside of the streaming and the scheduling and everything. Like I actually have made recently a sketchbook for myself, which I call it my fun sketchbook.
Mm.
Anything I draw in there, anything I do in there will only be for funsies and it will never ever show up for like merch or for stream stuff at all. That is my fun little notebook. That is my little playground. No work goes in there. Nothing.
It's got a lock on it. Stay out. Do not look at.
Yep. 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 It's because like it's very very different because like when I'm doing stuff with traditional and I actually did traditional art at the start when
Mm.
I did two things. I remember the fun and the joy when I was a kid, just like grabbing a crayon and starting to scribble and stuff like that, and then
Mhm.
grabbing a pen and just line arting it, trying to get that cell shade kind of thing going, but I couldn't of course because crayons. But
Yeah,
it was
that's
like
true.
the fun thing for me,
Yeah,
like the
yeah.
fun little fun thing for me.
That's
But
another.
when I'm doing stuff on tablet, it's tricky because my computer space has been designated for my work.
Mm.
So when I sit down at my computer, it's like, okay, gotta do this, gotta do that.
Mhm.
Whereas on my bed, on my sketchbook, yippee! Like scribble, scribble.
Fun time, fun time. Uh, yeah.
It's like the fun hours for me.
So when did you get started with this? I mean, were you like in the crib drawing on the walls?
Yeah, basically because when my dad was trying to again teach me how to talk and read, there would be times, and I'll admit I kind of didn't really feel upset at myself for this, but I would actually grab a few markers here and there and start drawing on the walls.
Mm.
My dad said that we would keep on running out of printer paper. Like he would buy like those big stacks of printer paper.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
would go through half of it or more in a week. So
That's
he's like,
brilliant.
I gotta buy more paper. Oh no.
That's wonderful. It really is. And
Hmm.
with that, and obviously you had a love for it early. Um,
Hmm. Hmm.
Going into classes for art in the different formats you did, was that restricting in a way after you kind of learned how to do these things on your own to have a kind of a rigid format that people wanted to teach you?
It really was. I'll admit that when I was in college, when I first started out, it was very stressful. And I mentioned it a bit myself, like, because you have to stay to a schedule. Yeah, you can make your schedule. Yeah,
Mm,
you can choose, oh, do I want to have a class at 5 p.m. or do I want to have a class at 12?
mm,
But the thing is that it's very industry oriented.
mm,
And because since I'm a person who likes to try and find things that work like without spending, especially because like art programs are very expensive.
right.
I won't lie. My
Mm,
tablet is very expensive.
mm,
But when I was forced into an environment where it was you have to do it like this, you have to do it like that, there's only one way or it's the highway.
mm.
I'm just going like, no, there's other ways to do it. I was even talking to my other fellow students, like students like classmates in there, and they were like, how are you doing the assignments? Just curious. You don't have like Photoshop. You don't have this or that. And I'm
Mm.
like, I'm using free software that is on the line the web and it works just as well. Or I'm using like a program Clip Studio, which is a lot cheaper and doesn't want to make you cry with the bill that it gives you at the end. Plus, it was just a lot easier because I grew up with it.
Yeah. Well, now the instructor didn't find out, did they?
A few instructors actually were. I had like it was like a 50-50 shot.
Yeah.
Sometimes I would have an instructor that would be like, "You have to use Photoshop," and I'd be like, "Okay, make the PSD file
Yeah.
and work on it on CSP, and then save it as a PSD." There you go. That's what I would do. But then there was some that was like, "Does it make it? Does it work for you? Yeah. Can you draw in it? Yeah. Can you do the things that I'm doing? Yeah. Okay, then go off and do it.
Yeah.
Whatever. I don't care."
Well, there's at least
But
that little bit of freedom, a little bit to do it.
hmm.
Yeah, I would. Yeah, I hear. I've talked to some folks who really were almost depressed out of doing art from going to
Oh
school
yeah.
for it, and um, they get told that what they were doing was wrong. You have to do it this way, this way, this way, when they've already
Hmm.
developed their style by that age.
Yeah. Like I actually had a I'm not going to say names because I don't want to, of course. I actually had a professor who would constantly get on people who were drawing in even just the slightest bit of anime or even just cartoon for that matter too.
Mm,
Like I was one of his popular targets actually because I would be drawing in the style that you see me drawing on stream.
mm,
I would be drawing in like a very anime-ish cartoony style in my sketchbooks or even just on the side of my papers and he'd be like, "Don't do that.
mm.
Don't do that." And I'm like, "What? But what? Don't do that." But I
Uh,
am doing fine
yeah,
and I didn't mention anything about like, doing online stuff because I didn't want to, bring that on there.
right.
But it like the constant like there it is true that sometimes and it is true actually like that sometimes the colleges and the art classes being one way or the highway as expressed earlier
Yeah.
can make you really really sad about that.
Mm,
And I just wish it was more open because art itself in my opinion is like water. It can change shape depending on what the user does to it.
yeah.
Does the user want it to be cold? Then make it ice. Does the user want it to be a vapor? Then they'll make it a vapor.
Right.
Do they want to make it like a triangle shaped sphere? Perhaps then they can.
They
It can do all sorts of different things.
They want to make it a melting hellscape with ants all over it. Yes,
Yep.
yes, you can do that.
Yeah. But that's what I find is the beautiful thing about art. And so seeing when I got into the college sphere that it was very one way or the highway just kind of made me sad, actually. It made me very, very sad.
But it didn't stop you.
It didn't stop me, but there were times on stream that people could definitely see, ah, rough day in class. Mm-hmm. Okay, we'll be here for you. Don't worry. You can just chill and vibe. You wanna vent about it? No. Okay, then we'll just be here for you. Don't worry.
You're just
Yeah.
drawing this square over and over and over again.
I actually sometimes did my homework on stream. I am not even joking. I had a perspective class where we were making a big, big notebook. His homework was very easy, don't get me wrong.
Mm-hmm.
But I had to make a 70 plus page notebook. And it had to have all his notes and everything.
Right.
Which, again, felt restrictive.
Mm-hmm.
And I learned a lot of stuff from there, but it felt like as if I was just kind of printing out the information that I was getting.
Yeah.
Which also was something I had trouble with school, actually, a bit.
Yeah, yeah. Why don't you just hand it out if you're going to do that? I mean,
yeah.
If you want them to learn it, give it to them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. I do have ADHD, so my focus can be really, really easily grabbed away from something. Like if I see something, which was common in elementary, of course, I would be staring or just looking around. Sometimes I would read ahead of the class. I actually had this happen one time where my teacher was having the students read each thing, and then I started reading because I thought that, oh shoot, where are they? Where are they? Okay, here's where they are. Read, and everyone was looking at me so strange, and I'm like, oops, I was distracted. ADHD.
And the teacher's like, go to the office.
Yeah. Basically.
Take the walk of shame.
Yep. Suds.
It's absolutely amazing to me that to talk to artists and how they've developed and how they've developed their style and still developing. I'm sure that you're still finding things to do with it.
Yes.
I mean, I have absolutely no ability for this, and I found that out very early. So it's very fascinating to see different ways that it comes about. When you talk with other artists, do you compare that sort of thing, or do you just kind of accept everybody as where they're at?
Honestly, I tried to when I talk to different artists, depending on what they want to talk about like the comparing part, it is honestly true that some people do compare each other, and I even still compare myself, unfortunately, to different artists. But the thing is, what I try to do to make it not be like a negative thing, like thinking, oh, I wish my style was like that, or oh man, I wish I could do coloring like that. I instead do this. Huh. I wonder how they got their style to like that. Huh. I wonder how they did that cool effect with the coloring.
Yeah.
I say how, or like, what did you do? I kind of basically take that negativity in a sense and I reverse it into a positive thing. Like, I want to know how. Like, how did you do this? How did you do that? How did you get that color effect to change from this and that? How do you do that? Because I think that's a much more better way to look at it personally.
It is
doing the poor is me.
Yeah.
Because that's gonna just ultimately self-destruct you right there.
I can tell you what, if I put down something and showed it to you, your questions would just be why and kill it with fire.
And I honestly like to try to see if I can inspire people because I get inspired by so many people all the time, like even just people doing like art or speed paints, and which I love to watch as well. But I like to try and inspire others because I don't like the competitive mentality. The competitive mentality, I feel like it ruins things a bit. Whereas working together is better personally because everyone gets something out of it. We get our questions answered. We learn together, and of course, we grow together.
Absolutely, and a wonderful attitude to have. I got to ask you this question though: has your background in art colored how you enjoy video games? It,
Say again. Sorry.
how has your background in art, has that changed the way that you enjoy video games? If you were start a game and you start criticizing the art and start looking at how they did the art, and the game itself kind of goes by the wayside.
For me, when I play video games, there has been some times where I'm like, okay, this could have been done a little bit better. But I also try and look and see, again, the why did they do this?
Mm.
Like why did they choose this style? Like, why was this style done the way it was, perhaps?
Mm.
Why did they take two styles and mix them together? Or how did they take two styles and mix them together? There have been some games where I played where it's like a pixel. Again, names are the bane of me, so I can't say for sure. But like,
Right.
okay, Sea of Stars recently. That's a game that I played.
Mm-hmm.
It had a watercolor like esque style to the pixel art,
Mm-hmm.
and I found that very fascinating about how they were able to take those two kinds of things
Mm-hmm.
and put it together because watercolor is very, very dependent on like light per se.
Right.
And pixel art is very most of the time I see it like it's very rigid sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
So they have to try and figure out how to make that flow happen
Mm-hmm.
with the pixel art.
Mm-hmm.
And I like to try and see how does this thing benefit the game, or how could it have been done better for the game sometimes.
This interview is not going to be long enough. That's a good thing for me, because everything you say is, it's obviously how much it means to you and how much you're enjoying it, and how much you want to keep doing it. And I really do need to have you back as soon as possible, because we haven't even got started yet. If you're up to
It's
it,
been wonderful.
I really,
Yeah, I'd be down.
yeah, I really do appreciate it. We're going to be starting some new formatted interviews coming up in December, and we'll get you
Ooh.
back on that, and go from there. But see, we didn't even hardly get to talk about the channel at all. But
My bad.
but the fact is that we learned a lot about a very talented person who is very much into what they're doing, and you can't do anything but take your hat off to somebody like that. So,
Thank you.
congratulations. More in the future, please.
Mhm.
And we'll have all of the links that we've been able to find for you up on the description for this interview. Shuji, thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you for inviting me on. And for those that are listening, make sure that you subscribe to Eric Siloy's channel. Please do that. Please do that.
Thank you for listening to Eric Loy Interviews. Join us again next time when we talk to another member of the always interesting VTuber community.